Jack Nayler, welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
My pleasure. As we were just discussing, don't know if it was all right for me to share, but it's been a 10-year process of me getting you on the podcast. Maybe the longest courting period that I've ever had.
Yeah, it's First time we spoke was about 10 years ago when I was in Madrid, and didn't happen then, but we're here now finally, and yeah, it's great to be here. I had some amazing people on over the years, and obviously listened to a lot of them, so it's good to get on at last.
No, thank you very much, and we'll discuss all the times at Madrid and all them kind of things as we go on the next 45 minutes to an hour. But if anyone doesn't know who you are, Jack, would you mind just giving us a brief bio? And the brief bio will be I know you don't want me to say this, but a very impressive one because of where you've been and things like that. And we'll get into that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, a brief bio. What are you doing now? Where you've been?
Yeah, okay. So currently head of first team sports science at Everton. I've been here for about a year now, so it's been the last year. If I go back to the start, I went to Loughborough University, and then there was an opportunity for a sandwich year between my second and third year of my undergrad placement at Chelsea Football Club with the first team there, which I went through a selection process for and was lucky enough to get. So I spent a year during my undergrad degree working at Chelsea's training ground with the first team there for Nick Broad, who was the head of sports science, which was unbelievable, obviously, introduction to life and in professional sport, and unbelievable time that the club was going through as well, with a big team, big names, big players at that point. And I came in just post Jose Mourinho, and so there's loads of kind of cool stuff going on at the club, loads of really great staff there, and learnt loads in a year. I went back and finished my undergrad, and then after I graduated, I went back and worked at Chelsea again the following season. And then at the end of the season, Carlo Ancelotti was manager at that point, and for that, at the end of that season, he was sacked, and there was a whole load of staff changes with change in management, and that included me. So then I was out of the job again, and then I signed up for a master's at Edith Cowan University, which online strength conditioning masters, which was a really, really good course. Greg Huff and Sophia Nymphius running it, but some really great lecturers on it as well. Quite a few of them been on the podcast over the years, but lots of David Joyce and Martin Bouchard and Jeremy Shepherd, and loads of really good people to go and learn from, which is what was really sort of attracted me to the course at that point. So I signed up for that, and then 6 months later, I got a call. I did a personal training course because I thought, well, if I'm going to do strength conditioning, I'll do a personal training course, give me just build up my coaching hours and get some experience that way. And then I got a call from Nick, who'd also left Chelsea, and he said, "Oh, Carlo's going to PSG. I'm going to go with him as head of performance, and do you want to come and help me just to get set up for a month?" And it was my master's started in Australia starting in February, and this was at Christmas, so it's sort of the month of January free. So I was like, yeah, perfect. That was great. I can come over for a month and a bit of an adventure in Paris for a month and have some fun and go and experience something else. And went over there, and I think after maybe 10 days, Nick basically sat me down at dinner one night and was like, "Yeah, you need to stay. We need to sort of, you can't. I need the help. We've got too much to do, and can you stay?" And so I signed up for a master's, like I said. So I just elected to take that to part time, and yeah, stayed in Paris. And so we were there until, so this was 2012. So the 2011-2012 season, halfway through the season joined, and then was there until the end of the following season, 2012-2013. In that time, whilst we were in Paris, it was an amazing experience. The club is 6 months after the takeover by the Qatari investment fund, and they were kind of saying, well, we know where the club is. So at that point, up to that point, the club had been a mid-table to top 6 French league team, and they just said, "Oh, look, we know where the club is, but we think we've got potential to be a Barcelona, Real Madrid level type club. We're going to put the investment in. We've invested in Carlo and Nick and everything else to raise the level of the club and tell us where we need to go and what we need to do." Leonardo was the sporting director, and Nick was kind of head of performance. It was amazing because for him, for someone so innovative, it was almost a kind of blank slate, almost a blank check to go, like, what do we need to do? What are all the cool things we can do? What are the basics need putting in place? And so there's just loads and loads of project work going on, and really exciting to be involved with. So I was working really closely with Nick on all those kind of things with different consultants. We were getting involved from around the world, and it was really interesting. And it was us two plus Paul Clement was the assistant manager, and we came over with sort of 3 English guys living in Paris. It was good fun. And then, unfortunately or tragically, Nick, in the January 2013, so we'd been there a year, was killed in a car accident in Paris, and the whole thing just kind of a huge change, obviously overnight, huge kind of personal upheaval and loss and tragedy, because, like I said, we'd been living over there as kind of English guys, working together all the time and going out dinner and stuff all the time, and so a big loss from that point of view. But obviously professionally as well, just a huge loss for me as sort of a boss and mentor, but also for the club and all the things that Nick was involved in, and entered this kind of mad situation where the club were like, well, we really liked all the things that Nick was doing, all the projects. We believed that we were doing some of the right things, but they were sort of talking to me. They were saying, well, you're probably the one person in the club who knew most about what was going on. So can you kind of carry it on and until the end of the season? So I found myself in this kind of mad situation where we're at a club in the first knockout round of the Champions League, and I'm 18 months post my undergraduate degree, and they asked me to kind of take over the responsibilities of a head of performance, and I had absolutely no idea what I was doing.
How old were you, Jack, at the time?
So that was in 2013, so I would have been 26.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Go on, mate. Carry on.
Yeah. So mad situation, and sink or swim. Like, I learnt loads, like tons, and the club were absolutely amazing, and the way they looked after staff, Nick, his family, everything through that period was absolutely unbelievable, and yeah, it was just a real help, and we got through to the end of the season, and running in parallel, I guess, with that and all the kind of personal stuff that goes on with that is that the game doesn't stop. I remember, I can't remember exactly what day Nick's accident was, but it was kind of midweek, and the club asked we had an away game. I think it was against Bordeaux at the weekend. Those few days a bit of a blur, and the club asked to suspend the game because of the players were everyone was kind of just in such shock, and the league wouldn't let us, so we had to go and play this game, and so the football doesn't stop; it just carries on, and so we were going along, and actually there was probably some tension. Results weren't quite what the ownership were expecting. I think they were expecting it to be a lot more successful, a lot quicker than it was. And I think Carlo was courted for being courted for manager at Real Madrid. And the feeling was, and the way it was going was that he was probably going to be sacked at the end of the season anyway from PSG. So I remember Carlo, so it wasn't that long, probably like a couple months after Nick's accident, Carlo walking out the training ground, and Carlo's like, "Oh, did you want to come to Real Madrid?" who are going to Real Madrid. Like, wow, okay, yeah.
I'm all right, Carlo. Who needs Real Madrid?
Going to be head coach of Real Madrid. Do you want to tell them people like this stuff? I was like, wow, yeah. I couldn't believe it. What was happening? And like, yeah, okay, great. So we won the league, and that year, which was amazing in the end, and amazing the transformation the club went through in that time, and the players that we signed, and the Thiago Silva arrived, then Zlatan Ibrahimovic arrived, and then David Beckham arrived. It was all like amazing to kind of.
So were you there then? Were
Yeah.
you there then?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
That is prime Real Madrid of kind of our generation, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that was PSG. That was the PSG guys, and so that was PSG.
Oh, sorry, but yeah. Okay.
And then we went to Madrid, and that was the summer we signed Gareth Bale. So yeah, I mean the team was. I remember we turned up and they just opened the kind of residence hotel at the training ground. It was like walking into like a 5-star hotel. It was just I couldn't I think my jaw was on the floor the whole way around, and it was just like we all had a room there, and like there's my name with the Real Madrid badge next to the door, and like I walked in there. I think I just dropped my bag. I think I'd kept it pretty cool up until that point. I think I've got into my room. And I've just started like jumping around the room, like going a bit mad. Like I can't believe what's going on. And I didn't realise that I shared a balcony with Paul Clement, and he stood on the balcony watching me. Like, so yeah,
that's class.
But yeah, so we joined that. I mean, and the team at Real Madrid was just unbelievable, and so fortunate to get to work with and experience working with some of the players and the environment, but it comes with a lot of pressure as well. Of course, to win games, and the expectation there is that you win trophies, and that's what we tried to do, and we were relatively successful in that, which was good. So we were there for 2 years, and then I left there, and
we'll come back to that, Jack, and the kind of pressure side of things. I'm just telling you to remind myself, really.
Fine, yeah. And so I left Madrid. And it was then sort of looking for another job, and still really when I think about it, I was only 5 years since I finished my undergrad. I hadn't yet finished my masters. Still pretty relatively. I found myself in this weird space where my career had gone backwards, where I had all this experience at big clubs and with big players, stuff like that, but still pretty early in my career. And I look back. You look back now, you think, "God, I didn't know anything at that point." I'll probably look back in another 10 years and think I didn't know anything now. But so I left there and was looking for another job, and I found it really difficult to get a job. And
how was that? How did you deal with that?
Yeah.
Like you say, the CV, anyone from afar would say, wow, you're going to be you're going to be into the next Champions League club or whatever. But how do you deal with that?
I was interviewing for loads of different things, or applying for things and not getting anywhere. And I didn't actually have that many interviews. Applying for a lot, I didn't actually get a lot of interviews. And I was asking for feedback, and it was either you're not experienced enough, or look at the places you've worked. You're too experienced for here. And I was like, right, well, I'm applying for these jobs for a reason. Like I think they're, and so it was really difficult. It was really difficult, and actually, so we left there in the summer. So I was getting married that summer. So I got married, moved back with my mum and dad with a new wife, and so not an ideal situation. And then I just said, so I had to go to Australia because my master's had been predominantly online, but there was a practicum that ran in the January or February. And so I just said to my wife, look, if I haven't got any work by like November, my wife was working, let's go to Australia, New Zealand, let's just go. Like I played rugby, and I had loads of mates from Australia and New Zealand who'd moved back there, and their wives and girlfriends were good friends with my wife. And so we're like, look, we'll just go over to Australia and New Zealand. And we had a wedding that was the weekend after this practicum for my masters. So the masters was in Perth. and the wedding was in New Zealand, so we're like, look, we'll just go for 3 months. So we did that. It was like amazing experience, and came back from that. I was like, right. And whilst we were there, I did loads of like visits to different clubs. I went to Canterbury Crusaders. I went to visit David Joyce at G Deutsch Giants. Like basically every city I went into, I'd try and email someone or try and go and visit somewhere and try and just do a bit of learning on my way around as well. And then came around, I was like, yeah, okay, really ready to work. We need to work financially, really need to work, really ready to work, and just still really struggling. I thought coming back March, April time, clubs would be starting to think about next season. There'll be some staffing changes, things like that. This is the period. So hopefully get a job, and then didn't get a job again, and got through that kind of few months, and then through the summer, and it was just getting tougher and tougher. And I remember a really good friend of ours it was his 30th birthday, and we arranged to rent a house in Edinburgh for the week and go to the Edinburgh Festival at the end of August. And I just said to my wife, right, when we get back from this weekend, that's it. I'm going to look at my CV, rip it up, rewrite it, and just going to find another career because this is madness. So that was the plan. And then Brendan Rodgers had started as manager at Celtic that pre-season. And Glenn Driscoll was the head of performance, and he was the first team fitness coach at Chelsea back in the day when I started. I was kept in touch with Glenn, and he's been great to me through my career, and really get on with him, and still to this day, like a bit of a mentor and things. And he, I said, look, do you want to go? I'm going to be in Scotland, in Edinburgh. I'll jump across to Glasgow and we'll grab a coffee. And so we did that, and we met, and he was like, actually, we need a head of sports science. Would you be interested? I was like, well, your timing can be better because literally tomorrow I'm going back and start a new career. Went to Celtic as head of sports science and was there for 5 years, and loved it there. Some great staff there. Really good experience. We were successful, which helped. We had some really good success, and but again, like it's a huge club, and the players up there were fantastic, and really good pros, and just really enjoyable to work with. And so I had a really good time for 5 years. But it got to the point where I think I knew to progress, I probably needed to move on, and so started thinking about that. And then I got asked about. I got contacted by Red Bull basically, and they'd been through they were going through a kind of realignment and restructure where they realised that from performance side, their clubs and teams were kind of weren't on the same page. They were all kind of doing different things, and they had these athlete performance centres in Talgal, just outside Salzburg, and then in LA, and they decided to put a load of investment into those, employ a load of experts and people to work there, and then also to use those to then sort of realign the practice in the clubs. And so through that process, they approached me about head of sports science at RB Leipzig. So decided to make the move there over to Germany, and went over there. So that was 2021, and was there for about 6 months, and then the Red Bull guys then kind of asked me, would you come and work for the global team, working across the clubs, which was one of the appeals in the first place of joining Red Bull, to think, oh, perhaps there's like a role there and working across the clubs, or with the APC, the Athlete Performance Centre. So I did that for about 6 months, and that was great. I was sort of travelling to different clubs in New York and Salzburg and Germany, and sort of trying to help the staff or help put in place processes around what we were doing, trying to get alignment. And then, but it was just a bit, family-wise, it was a difficult situation because we're talking about relocating, and it just wasn't really going to work. I had 2 kids by this point. It wasn't really going to work out for the family. So left there and had an opportunity to join Everton about a year ago. So yeah, there you go. Quite a long-winded one.
Unreal. I mean, anyone that has come across your name will know a little bit of the kind of where you've been.
Yeah.
But unbelievable, like top 2, sometimes top club in England at Chelsea.
Yeah.
Want to be, and soon to be at the time when you were there, top club in France.
Yeah.
Obviously, top club in Europe and Spain in Real Madrid.
Yeah.
And then Leipzig, again, similar situation.
Yeah.
I think absolutely incredible. Like it's great to listen to that and think wow, like what an incredible experience at each of those places. But one thing I've got written down, and I say that, but with that comes incredible amounts of pressure.
Yeah.
How have you dealt with that pressure working at these clubs and it's been so young at these clubs, and like you say, going to Real Madrid and your name's on the door, which is unbelievable. But obviously with that comes incredible amounts of pressure and knowing that things can, if a few results go badly, you're gone. Like there's
I remember in Paris,
there's not much of a safety net.
Yeah, I remember in Paris we had a few sticky results and things weren't looking great, and we were thinking, this might only be going one way at the moment. And I think if we hadn't won the next game, then we were pretty certain that was going to be it. And I remember my girlfriend, time now wife, had quit a job in London and moved over to Paris to live with me. And about 6 weeks after she arrived, I came back from where I was like, yeah, so if we don't win on Wednesday night, I think we're getting sacked. And she just sort of looked at me like, right, what have I just quit my job for, and why am I here? Yeah, so there is a huge amount of pressure. There's a lot riding on the games, and I think you have to you almost have to try and remove yourself from it a little bit. I think you have to also, it's difficult because it's your life, but I think particularly like Paris and Madrid, we were, like you said, we were young, and probably the consequences weren't probably as big as now when we've got kids in school and stuff like that. So and probably think, right, well, we're a bit more flexible, just the two of us, we can move about and things like that. And you just try and remove yourself from that pressure. I think you try and find ways to remove yourself from it. I think one of the biggest challenges I found was in Madrid was just it's just everywhere. I remember the 2014 summer of 2014. Whilst I was at uni in Loughborough, I'd done a coaching exchange, charity coaching exchange, and went and lived in Lusaka in Zambia for the summer coaching with a load of students from different universities, which was unbelievable, and made some really good friends there. And summer 2014, decided to go back with my wife and go and visit. And I remember we flew into Lusaka, and it was because it's 2014 World Cup. And I remember walking out the airport in Lusaka, and the whole of which is not a big airport, it's tiny, really, and the car park was wrapped in a Pepsi sponsorship, and it was Sergio Ramos's face all around it. So I've walked out my summer off, come to Zambia, and there's a guy I work with every day, his face plastered everywhere, and the interest, the level of interest and things like that. I remember at PSG and at Madrid, journalists waiting outside the gate and coming up to you and talking to you as if they know you. They sort of come and go, "Oh, Jack," and be like, "Oh, hi," and you don't. Again, probably young and naive at that point, you don't think this is a journalist who's out to try and catch me out here. But
was there please veto this and we can keep it to our private conversation, but was there a time when you got into a little sticky situation with the press? Did you tell me that? Yeah. So can you say that or not? Feel free to say no, Jack.
Ended up in the Sunday Times, so it's not like it's a secret. Again, just complete naivety, and on my part, I was asked to be on a panel at a conference, and so I agreed to do it, and I didn't realise that there were press in the room. Again, naive, and the panel was sort of discussing buy-in from players and GPS, and we're talking about sort of driving competition through some of the reporting and the numbers and trying to get players to buy in that way. And I just sort of told this cautionary tale where one of our players, we were doing some speed work, and the guys were kind of getting quite excited on the live data about who was the quickest, and they were saying, well, who's been the quickest this season, and can you put up a league table in the dressing room? And I was like, in my head, I'm going, rubbing my hands, going, this is brilliant, this, getting great buy-in here, the lads really buying into this. And so I went and did that, and one of the players wasn't top of the list, and then after that it was difficult at times to get him to wear the GPS anymore and things like that. And so I told this story as a sort of cautionary tale, and then
did you mention the player's name on the panel?
I didn't know.
Okay,
but it was probably obvious from the description who it was. And then it ended up in this, and then so that was, I think it was international break, maybe. And then I think we got through the following week, and then the week after that we had a cup quarter-final, semi-final in Spain against Atletico Madrid. So obviously huge rivalry, big game, and that was on the Tuesday night. And on the Sunday before, this story comes out in the Sunday Times, and it's quoting me as saying this player refuses to be put on the clock and describing him as a slow coach and all this. And it's a story in the Sunday Times. I remember my dad ringing me, going, "Oh, you're in the Sunday Times. That's good, isn't it?" And I read it. I was like, "Oh no, this is a disaster.
I'm going to get sacked, Dad."
I didn't sleep for like a week, and I remember sending it to like the press secretary and going, "This is bad, isn't it?" And he just rang me and went, "Yeah, it's really, really bad." And I was like, "Oh God," and just feeling sick and just foolish and yeah. Like I said, I didn't sleep for a week. The press interest in Spain for Real Madrid is mad. You've got Marca and as the two biggest newspapers in Spain are Madrid-centric sporting newspapers, and the first 10 pages each day of their newspaper coverage are about Real Madrid. And so the amount of content they have to fill, any little story anywhere, they'll pick it up and they will blow it up and run it because they need to fill the content. And so I'm just going on their websites. I'm like literally not sleeping. So like at 3, 4, 5 a.m, I'm checking their websites, going, right, when's this story dropping? When's it going to break? And I remember, going to the manager and sort of apologising, and it's the last thing he probably needed. And Carlo, I'm like unbelievable guy. I love him. He's great, and he's so sort of relaxed about it. I can believe it. Which was I was expecting to get in real trouble, but he was just like, "It's no big deal, really, is it?" Do you think he's worried about it? And we got through, and it didn't come out, and the Spanish press couldn't believe it. And we got through the game, and we got through that week, and I just thought by the end of that week, I was like, I'm gonna have to say, I don't think it's gonna come out now. I think we've got away with it, but I'm going to have to say to the player. So I called the player and told him, and he just laughed it off. I was like, "That's nothing. Don't worry about it." And I just lost a week's sleep over it, thinking, "Oh God." So yeah, that was definitely a big kind of learning curve, is that kind of interest and level of interest in those clubs, and you as a person within that, because you don't think about it. You don't think who's going to be interested in me. So yeah.
So there's. So again, you say that story, so that's kind of one of the realities of working in them kind of clubs. But there were people looking at you and looking at your CV, and you'll be the envy of thousands of S&C coaches and sports scientists across the world who want to experience working in those kind of clubs with those kind of players. But what are some of the realities that you maybe didn't expect, or that you came across that may be useful for people as they pursue the kind of career that you've had in terms of working with these top players?
I think the first thing I'll say, like with the players that I've been fortunate to work with, the very best, and the ones who've had, and they've had long careers, they absolutely get all of the professionalism and hard work and everything that goes into making a really successful career. So, and just the relentless drive and motivation that they have to be at the top. When you talk about a Ronaldo or a Modric or a Ramos, and those guys at Madrid at that time, just you're playing as a club. You're doing 60 odd games a year. They're doing internationals on top of that. So you're playing every 3 days. And to be fair, it was similar at Celtic. We were doing 60, 70 games a year with European qualifiers and things like that. And some of the players there, I look at Scott Brown was unbelievable. Callum McGregor's the captain now. Kieran Tierney, these guys. Just the drive and the relentlessness in every single game to perform is unbelievable. Like I in Madrid, I was just working the home games, and sometimes I'd be like, I would be like, okay, here we go, another game, and I'd be thinking, right, I've got to. And my roles and responsibilities were minor, obviously very minor compared to some other people's, but it's that kind of relentless nature of the games, and just hugely impressive when you see it up close. And the play, and like I said, those players they absolutely get the professionalism and the level of care that they have to do and look after themselves to operate at that level, I guess. And they're pushing you all the time. They're challenging you. They're challenging you to be better. They force you to be better because they're constantly demanding from you and from the staff and from everyone.
In what way, Jack? In what way?
I think just in the. I think they're not challenging you perhaps overtly. Some of them would, like an Ibrahimovic would. He'd ask for more. He'd tell you to your face if he didn't think you were doing the right thing. You weren't being good enough. But he always did it in the right way. Like I've got unbelievable amount of time for that man. He was unbelievable with me and really helped me, particularly through that time with Nick's accident and stuff like that. He was unbelievable. So, but challenging in a really good way and would overtly say things. But other players perhaps not overtly challenging you, but just they wanted to be the best they could be. So you want to provide for them the best you can be, if that makes sense, and you want to deliver for them the best you can be and what you think is the best, and so that just internal drive then to be better is a challenge to kind of do that.
When we met when you were at Celtic, it was this next topic came up a couple of times, and I 100% get it. And I almost, when people will talk about your CV or the clubs that you've been at, it's almost like just a bit of an imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Is that something that you had working at those particular clubs, and maybe on the back end of Real Madrid and not being able to get a job and thinking about changing careers and all that kind of thing? How much imposter syndrome was there, and what effect did that have on you?
Yeah, I say at that time it was massive imposter syndrome. I felt like I never experienced this at all. I don't want it to come across, but in my head I was thinking people will be looking at me would there be some envy, some what's he doing there? How's that happened? And I knew I was relatively inexperienced. I was working at that level, and through sort of circumstance and serendipity a little bit, being in the right place at the right time to end up there. So there was definitely a lot of imposter syndrome, thinking, "God, right, what am I doing here?" And what are people thinking about me being here? And then people. It was interesting because you work at somewhere like Real Madrid. Like I said, the level of interest in that club is unbelievable, and then people come to you for all sorts of different things. Whether there's products they want to sell, or they want you to sort of get involved in the R&D with something, or they want you to come and talk at an event or a conference or something like that, just because of the club that you're working at. and it felt like that. It was something.
Or come on a podcast.
Yeah, yeah, but it felt like that. It felt like that at times where there was. It felt like people were. I was thinking, no one would know who I was if I wasn't working here, and so why? So the fact that I'm working here, does that mean I've got anything valid to say? I don't know. Is what I say of value? I don't know. And like I said, I felt very fortunate to have ended up where I was. It wasn't a designed plan. It wasn't like I thought, well, one day I'm gonna. I remember when I was probably about 13 or 14, my mum and dad went to Madrid for a weekend and came back, and they bought me a Real Madrid t-shirt. And I remember having this t-shirt, and then like just over 10 years later, I'm working there. I remember, and just like unbelievable kind of circumstances that ended up there. But yeah, there was a lot. I remember walking, and this was, and Twitter was kind of a growing thing at that point, and it seemed to be quite a good community on there. And I was on there, and I remember like walking through the gym in Madrid, and there was a versa pulley. I'd never seen one before, and so I thought, well, there's this little community on Twitter that could be useful, so I took a photo of it and put it on Twitter, thinking, oh well, does anyone know what this is? And like I got kind of quite a few replies. People going, "That's a versa pulley. We'd love one of them," or like, "Yeah, like we use that all the time." And just kind of without no one ever said it, but in my head, my imposter syndrome was going, "Duh, it's a versa pulley." Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and so I just felt really stupid then, and just little things like that. I think when you think, "Oh, right, okay, put my foot in it a bit there, maybe." So yeah, loads of kind of imposter syndrome going on at that point. And it's still probably there at a lot of points. I think it's probably something that a lot of people suffer with, but actually heard it framed. I've heard it framed in a much better way recently, which has kind of helped a lot. Which is that it's imposter syndrome is what kind of fuels your curiosity, and what it's not just a negative thing, because if you don't have any imposter syndrome, then you're never going to want to learn to be better. You're never going to want to drive yourself to be better. And I remember like when they said, it's like, do you think Donald Trump's got imposter syndrome? Do you think he's got any imposter syndrome? No, but he's like, so like if you've got a level of it, then it keeps you humble and curious and learning and moving forwards, which I think when I then kind of frame it in that way, it helps. But I think it's something that probably a lot of people suffer with.
Mm-hmm. So just more, I suppose, an incredible story. Like I'm happy to chat about the story and the kind of experiences and things all day long. But in terms of you would you class yourself as a sports scientist? Is that kind of
I've always worked in
side of things? Yeah,
science roles. Yeah.
Yep. So again, leaning on your experiences at big clubs, 2 games a week, 60, 70 games a season. In terms of your expectation of yourself, in terms of the club's expectation of you, and this is providing information, again, hopefully for people who want to go on that journey, and hopefully when they get there, they're not, I didn't think it would be like this, because you're going to tell them what it's like. But how are you expected to make these guys better? And if so, how? And if it's not, what does the role look like? Especially with these players, like you say, I mean, you chuck Modric, Ramos, and Ronaldo names out there like it was nothing, but it's amazing. So how are you getting stuff from these guys who are the best in the world, and you've got so many games coming thick and fast?
Yeah, well, I think one of the first things which I think a lot of people experience in football, probably any sport, is that guys who've got that much experience. I think I was quite aware going into somewhere like Madrid, where there's been quite a few managerial changes over the preceding years, and you've got these players they've played in different systems, in different philosophies, in different training regimes and things like that. They've all got their own thoughts on it themselves. At that point, it was just kind of players were starting to get their own people that they worked with outside of clubs, which is obviously a much bigger thing now. And I think we just really focused on the remit in Madrid was simple. It was win games, and so it wasn't really about player development. There was an aspect of that, but it wasn't the main thing. The main thing was just about performing. So it was about how do we prepare the team to perform best, and what do we do with our training loads and things like that to get the team to perform better.
Sorry to jump in there, Jack. When that is the aim, win games.
Yeah.
Does that sometimes, as a sports scientist, someone that's obviously gone down the education pathway, is constantly learning, wants to do things that are making people better?
Yeah.
Does that sometimes feel a little bit stifling?
It can. It probably can do, but I think at the end of the day, that's ultimately why you work in performance sport as well, right? You want to win games and you want to win trophy. I've been really fortunate to have been involved with a load of different trophy winning sides, and they're really inspiring to be around, and you learn a lot from them. And I think we've also got to win. If we were there to, we want to develop people, absolutely. But if all we were there to do was develop people, and it was a really nice environment, but we never won a game, then we also wouldn't be there very long. So yeah, I think it potentially could feel like that. But I think you get interested in different, and perhaps it's just a different challenge to throw yourself into. You get interested in different things and looking at things in different ways. I certainly felt like my role at that point, it's the landscape's probably changed quite a lot. From when I remember when I first started my career, Nick was head of sports science at Chelsea, and he was we were the sports science department, a sub part of the medical team. And I remember when I first started, every player wore a heart rate, but we only had 5 GPS units in the building, and we were making the majority of our decisions based on heart rate data, very little external load data on the players as a whole. It was a bit of a fight and an argument getting players to wear them at times. We had 5 units. We were trying to rotate around the squad so that we got a kind of overview of what everyone was doing. It was very early days of GPS, and so from probably those experiences, I saw much more so now the sports scientist and fitness coach have sort of merged into one role probably. But at that point, at Chelsea and at PSG and at Madrid in those early days, I was the sports scientist. There was a separate group of physical coaches, and there was even in that was not to the same extent, but there was that kind of setup in Leipzig, even where there was the athletic coaches were separate to the sports science department, and so I've always seen my role, or the role of a sports scientist for me in that kind of environment, is like you're like a translator. For me, you've got to, particularly if we're focused on performance, you've got to be able to have conversations. There's 3 other departments there in coaching, physical and medical, and you've got to almost fit and be able to have conversations with all 3 of those. And I think with the data and information that we provide, it would hopefully act to create some unified decision making across those departments, and to work between them. And so I think I think it's a really important part of our role is to be able to sit down and be able to have conversations with those 3 departments on their level, and communicate with them and help understand what their challenges are, what things they're trying to do, and to try and get some kind of joined up thinking through the information that we can provide with them.
How have you found that? Has that been easier, more difficult, or just different when you went to these different places that you mentioned early on in your career as a manager's appointment? He said, like, come with me, we're going to Madrid, or whatever it has been. But then later you've applied for these jobs, or you've been headhunted, and you're part of a club staff.
Yeah.
So have you found that more challenging to sell that message, to be the translator across some environments when you've been a club guy versus a manager's guy?
I think when you're the manager's guy and you're going in, I've been on the other side of it when I've been in the club and there's a new management team coming in. There's always a load of apprehension about what's walking through the door. So I think if you can go in and go into those environments and show that you are there to respect what they do as well and learn from them and be open and to be like, look, I'm here to help everyone. I'm not here to, yes, I come with a manager, but I'm here to help everyone be better here and if there's and to try and build some trusting relationships with some of the staff in the medical team or with the in-house fitness coaches that are there or whoever it is, that you're there to kind of help get their message across, and sort of you can say that I can help with the messaging to the manager here. Or you can help them with managing the manager's expectations a bit as well and things like that. So I think if you guide it from that point of view and you're open and you're also willing to learn, like you also got to not disrespect, like you go into Madrid and the physios who were there at that time had been there, some of them had been there for 20, 30 years and unbelievable experiences and you know had about 10 Champions Leagues under their belts. And so you've also got to go in and learn from them. That was something else I think I learned pretty quickly when you go abroad. I think we're really fortunate in the UK that so much research and so much knowledge and information comes out in an English speaking format. So you go to so much comes out of the States, Australia, New Zealand, plus obviously the UK in terms of research, in terms of conferences, podcasts, information sharing. And that is potentially not accessible to practitioners in France, Spain, anywhere else that doesn't speak English. And so you've got to go in with a understanding that they might not know what you know, but then also you don't know what they know. And there's obviously amazing research that's been done in France and Spain and places like that that's perhaps come out in a French language that we've missed out on or we don't necessarily understand. And so again, you've got to go in open and not just be suspicious of the things you don't understand or dismissive of the things you don't understand. And you've got to understand that. So have that respect. I think so if you can go into a club and show that openness and respect for what they do, then that'll help. Yeah, definitely. I think coming back to your original question, then there's an in-house member of staff. It's probably just different. I think you've just got more time. But you go, like I said, you go into a PSG or a Real Madrid, they want you to win games. So it's kind of like, right, there's some things we need to do here, and we've got to build these relationships pretty quickly. And I think when I went into Celtic, there was a load of things that I wanted to do, and I just worked really hard and just did them myself and didn't really probably involve as many other people as I should have done or could have done, and probably made a bit of a mistake there and just trying to take it all on myself. And it still took, despite that, I thought at the time, we'll get there quicker if I should do this. I'll just do this. It's fine. And it probably still took 2 years to get to where we ended up after 2 years was like, okay, we're at a place that's pretty good now. And then so I think I've come into went into then Leipzig and Everton, a bit more experienced, obviously, going right, wait, okay, got a bit of time. If that doesn't happen straight away, we'll get there. We've got a bit more time, and so any kind of things we want to put in place or implement things like that, then yeah, I'm probably just a bit more relaxed as an in-house member of staff in terms of thinking, okay, we've got a bit more time to put some of those. Obviously, there's things that we want to that are going to have an immediate impact on the team that we're going to try and do pretty quickly, but there's probably longer term structural stuff and things like that, and things that you think, right, well, we can probably tackle that a little bit further down the line, like prioritise what we need to tackle right now, and then there's things that we can worry about later on rather than try and do everything at once.
My last question for you, and we've obviously mentioned a couple of players along the way, but I'm just wondering how much you, based on that, because you've been working with the best in the world at times in your career, in your current job, and feel free to reference the other ones as well. How have you tried to learn as much as you can from these players who've got so much experience, know their bodies incredibly well, have their own individual needs, all that kind of thing? How have you tried to kind of suck all that knowledge and experience from them to do a better job in your role as a sports scientist?
I think you just learn that one of the biggest things that I've probably learned about in the last few years, which has massively influenced my thinking, is sort of that we operate in a pretty complex environment and with individuals who are complex as well. And what I mean by that is that it's complex is different to complicated. So if something's complicated, there's still some cause and effect. It might be there's probably a pretty straight line we can draw through. So like a Formula One car is a ridiculously complicated piece of equipment, but when it breaks down, you should be able to take it apart, fix it, and put it back together again. When you put that Formula One car into a race, enters into a pretty complex system, and the performance of that car isn't necessarily dictated by the mechanics, or it's dictated by the other cars on the road, the other drivers, how much sleep the driver had last night, or like anything you want to mention really could have an effect on it. And so when you're working with some of these, that sort of led me to sort of reading a bit more about complex systems, because I think we just operate in one all the time. And one of the things about a complex system is that the person closest to the action has the biggest chance to influence it. And in a game of football, which is a very complex thing in itself, that's the man on the ball. So that's the player. And so I think there's, like you say, I've worked with players who unbelievable understanding of their own bodies and understanding of where they're at, and work with players who would in training sessions turn around to me or one of the coaches or whatever and go, I think that's probably enough for me today. And you can go, yeah, brilliant, fine, that's fine. Like, you get yourself in, and there's no amount of GPS that's going to tell you whether that's the right thing or not. But I think you get some players who you can trust with that kind of thing. So I think there's just learning to kind of identify which players you can do that with a little bit, and so I think there's conversations and things you can say and chat about with the players to go, right, okay, now they understand. But obviously not all players are like that, and particularly less experienced players aren't going to have that level of knowledge yet. So it's just trying to get them to try and understand their bodies a bit, I think, and so that's one of the things. I think then just when you're in and around these guys all the time, you just try and observe and understand, and you just see kind of what makes them tick, and the level of drive they have and the level of motivation they have is pretty self-evident. And it's at times, like I said, it's challenging. It can be a bit exhausting at times, and like Alvaro Arbeloa was at Madrid and didn't generally start that many games for us, and he was but probably like just an unbelievable pro. And I think if he was on the bench in a game and we had a day off after the game or whatever, he'd go around the dressing room and get all the other lads who are on the bench, go, come on, we're going training tomorrow. And he'd like come to me, Jack, come on, we're going in tomorrow training. And I'd like be like, right, okay, I'm supposed to have a day off. Right, we're going in. But just unbelievable drive. And he had a knee injury, and he bought himself an arm bike, and he used to do laps at the training ground on the arm bike during training, so he could watch training and exercise at the same time. And just that level of and he had an unbelievable career. Champions Leagues, Euro Championships, and World Cups with Spain, and like just unbelievable. But he sticks out in my mind because he probably got there more than anyone through their drive. He probably didn't have the natural talents of a Modric or those kind of guys, or a Gareth Bale or anything like that, but he got there through his drive. So I think just being around them and observing that kind of stuff and trying to learn from them and learning, and you see things and go, right, well, that's okay, that's worked for you. And there's things that you go, that's not textbook, or that's I don't know about that. Is that really doing anything for you? But it works for the player, and it works in the other way as well, where these guys are in the public spotlight. They're under huge amounts of pressure. They earn a lot of money. They have, you'd think from the outside everything they could want, but they still experience stresses and pressures in their life. And perhaps that was one of the things, I think, those stresses and pressures, you're not going to you and I, they might be pretty small. Like, it might be something that's pretty small, and you think, you're overreacting. You could go, you're just overreacting. But you've also got to understand that their stress reaction is still the same. And so they're still, regardless of whether you think the thing they're getting stressed about or not is right, they're still getting stressed, and that's not going to help performance. So you've got to deal with that. And I think with those guys, and talk about whether you want to say big egos or things like that. Was there big egos? Yeah, there were with some players. Was that a negative thing? No, it probably got them where they were a lot of the time. Like I said, I love Zlatan. He was unbelievable with me, and I only have positive things to say about him. And so I say this in a positive way, but it takes a big ego to take on like the goal he scored against England. That takes a big ego to think you can get away with that. And so these guys can produce at that level because they've got them. And so you don't want to go into these environments, and you never ever, like they exist in another level of talent and another level of life that you and I are never probably going to experience. And so you're never ever going to bring them down to your level and go, and so kind of the reaction, well, don't be ridiculous, or like, come on, that's not normal life. When you don't understand, you've basically got to go in there and you've got to go to them rather than thinking you can drag them down to your level and operate at your level. You've got to try and go to them and understand what they're going through, because as I said, we're after performance, and so if they're getting stressed about something, or something's not in their life is not helping or going wrong or something like that, then you need to try and understand that and try and fix that, as opposed to going the other way on it. Because I think those guys, if you think about football, this is the way I've thought about it as well. Think of it as the most popular sport in the world. I don't know how many billions of people play football around the world. And so if you think about it like a pyramid of players, the wider the base of the pyramid, the higher the peak. And so these guys are the top player, the handful of the very best. I don't know. I mean, whilst I was there, I think the 2 seasons I was in Madrid, over, or at least half of the FIFA Pro World 11 came from our team. So like they're in the top 10 in the world, right? Top 10, 11 in the world, outfield players. And so if you think of how many people, they're the very best out of billions. So they're just on a different level in terms of talent and drive and everything else. So you've got to try and understand that and go to them rather than trying to bring them down to you.
So good. I think I could go on all day, and I could ask you more questions and dive deeper into your time at various different clubs. So a slightly different podcast to normal, but we couldn't get you on and then just disregard the experiences in these clubs, because I think it's so unique. I don't think I've had anyone on the podcast that can give these kind of, I can see your imposter syndrome kind of bell ringing at the minute, but it's true. Like, it's definitely true. No one's been on the podcast who's got the experience of working in these incredible clubs. So it's been a pleasure to get you on and listen to what it's like, because there'll be thousands and hundreds of thousands of people out there who want a CV and want to experience the things that you have. So I appreciate the openness and honesty of, what you've delivered. So thank you.
No, I've been really lucky. I know that, and so if, like I said, I know there's a lot of interest around it at times, and people want to know what goes on and what it's like. So yeah, I've been lucky to experience it. So if there's things I've learned along the way that I can share, then I'm happy to do that. Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to ask you one more thing.
Yeah.
Where can people get in touch? Social media? The best place? Easiest place for you?
Yeah, I don't. So during lockdown, I decided to come off Twitter for basically for not a bad mental health, but just because otherwise I'd just sit at home scrolling through Twitter and stuff like that. So I decided to come off it, and also I don't know what everyone else felt through lockdown. There was so much CP. Everyone was doing a webinar, and there was so much CP.
Yeah.
I think you were exposed to it, and you felt guilty for not doing it a lot of the time. And I think, oh, I missed that, or I wanted to do that, and so after like a week of lockdown or 2 weeks, I was like, I'm just going to get rid of Twitter for a bit, and I've never been back on it. And so, yeah, best place probably LinkedIn. You can find me there. Yeah, probably the best place. If you add me, like, again, like I get about wanting to sound like arrogant all the time, but because of like my CV and things like that, I get added by loads of people all the time. A lot of them trying to sell stuff, and a lot of them trying to, and I think I've probably got 275 odd people waiting for a reply on an application for that. So yeah, if you want, you can try. I do like scroll through them, and if there's anyone I think because I get added
legitimate,
then definitely I'll yeah, it's or if I've missed someone now, someone's probably sitting there going, I'm legitimate, why me? Yeah, probably just missed it. But yeah, LinkedIn's probably the place on social media.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Jack. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day off. Appreciate you jumping on when you've got a rare one. So appreciate it, and look forward to chatting to you soon.
Cheers, mate. Thanks very much.
Thank you.